Well, hey there, everyone, and welcome inside the Bahakel Sports studio for the latest episode of Game On. I'm Bahakel Sports anchor Jack Taylor, and every Monday night we will take a look at some of the high school great sports moments from across the week before and get you ready for the week ahead. We'll bring you some of the highlights from the gridiron, the soccer field, and the volleyball court, and we'll catch up with some other teams from around the areas as well and talk a little bit about how one team is doing their part to affect mental health. And once a week, we'll tell you about some of the great stories in high school sports that we tag on our podcast. And to get us started, let's take a look at some of the big matchups on the gridiron this past Friday night. To start off week 4, we start with our Bahakel Sports Game of the Week between Marvin Ridge and Lake Norman. These are two teams with perfect starts to their season, both 3-0, which meant something had to give in this one. Someone had to lose. Early on, it seemed the defense for Lake Norman would give out. Marvin Ridge would come out hot on the offensive side of the ball. He's able to walk into the end zone there as quarterback Evan Metters gets it out with a big lead, 3 touchdown passes. This game seemed over. It was 21-0 very early on, but clearly that was not the case as the game went on. There was no shortage of confusion and action. The sprinklers came on at one point, but somehow Lake Norman would come back around to take this game back from Marvin Ridge after missing a very late field goal. Now moving on, there was no shortage of actions. We had two powerhouse programs undefeated, Weddington versus Butler High School out at Butler. A winning streak of 2 games for Butler Bulldogs while Weddington's undefeated. It was scoreless till 5 minutes to go in the second quarter, but you see there, Bulldogs striking first. Zach Lawrence can't find anyone to throw to, so he calls his own number. 30-yard run down the sidelines for the first touchdown. Then Weddington responds over the air on the next possession. Tyler Budge finding Javon Barber in the back of the end zone for the score. Extra point was good. They were tied up at 7. Butler, the special teams issues on their next possession, deep in their own territory. Snap a little bit too high there, and the ball goes out of the end zone for the safety. Weddington now up 9-7. Less than 20 seconds to go. Weddington driving. Tyler Budge with the screen pass to Nick Diamond, who gets out of bounds and gets the clock stopping. And now they're going to go for the field goal, and it is good. But in the end, Butler would come back to get the big win over Weddington, 22-15. We head out now to Hickory Ridge, taking on Chambers. Coach Brandon Wiggins with the fire in his eyes for the officials. The Cougars were hungry for Hickory Ridge. KJ Flo already took an interception to the house. The game was getting out of hand. And while the Raging Bulls played two-hand touch on Trey Robinson, it's a do-it-yourself day for Trey. Touchdown Cougars. 49-7 in the second quarter. At Chambers, everyone is in rhythm and everyone wants to dance, especially in the end zone. Journey Elder takes a journey of a screen pass and expedition for 6, 63-14. Chambers with a biblical beatdown of Hickory Ridge. Next up, Independence playing host to South Meck. Both teams in need of a win in the early part of this season. Independence losing on a heartbreaker to West Charlotte last week. This one was slow going in the beginning. Both defenses playing great ball. Neither offense got going until about midway through the second quarter. Indy finally able to get on the move. Justin Little finds Brian Crowder, who makes the tough catch and keeps the ball in his hands, coming down hard. It gives Indy a first down. And a few plays later, Little finds Brown again, who makes a great catch and then drags a defender with him right into the end zone, putting the Patriots up 7-0. They would continue this shutout, pitching the goose egg, 45-0 over South Meck.
Let's wrap up out at Northwest Cabarrus, where the Trojans took on the Mount Pleasant Tigers. And this one got ugly fast. Early in the game, Alex Walker fakes the handoff and zips it to Cecidio Castricone for the quick go-ahead touchdown. The Tigers found some life on defense, though, later in the game, as Walker, scrambling, overthrows his target, and Bo Barbie is able to secure it and take it the other way, finding some life, getting some blockers ahead of him before finally getting taken down. But it was the Trojans' rushing attack, led by Ray J. Waters, that would prove to be too powerful. Northwest Cabarrus pitches a shutout in front of the home crowd, 48-0.
Each week we present to you our Game of the Week with our analysts from Bahakel Sports. And so to talk about everything going on in week 4 of high school football, we have Bahakel Sports color commentator in partnership with National Amateur Sports, Reggie Walker, who called the action for us last football season and will be in the booth this season as well for our Game of the Week each week. Now, Reggie, as we look back to last Friday night, what stood out to you from what took place around the area?
I think a couple of things. I think the first thing and foremost, look, people can discuss the fact that Weddington lost the game if they want. But Weddington and Butler, I think those two teams, to play the way that they played, the plays that we saw made in that game, Lawrence making plays with his feet, everything Budge can do with his arm and his feet. You look at those two coaches and those coaching staffs. I just think, to me, regardless of who won that game, it was going to be impressive. And unless that was going to be a one-sided affair, a large margin of victory for one of the two, it was going to be impressive either way. I think those two teams certainly amongst the best, and we know that based on the rankings and all those other things. But those two teams in particular are impressive either way you look at it because of the competition they continue to play, right? You look at what Butler did just a couple of weeks ago in playing against a team out of Georgia that's one of the best in the country, and they were able to get that win. So you look at both of these teams, and all you can say is impressive and super talented.
Absolutely, Reggie. Now, you were at that game of the week where they had the big lead going forward and then a little bit of extracurriculars there late in the game. Do you think it was a bit of home cooking with those sprinklers coming on? Do you think that's when Lake Norman was able to pull back, or what was the feel in that game going forward?
Well, I tell you, the interesting thing in talking to Coach Oliphant, and he may get a little upset with me for saying this, but one of the things he talked about was his team being willing to pick a fight and try to win the fight. And in that particular game in the first half, it's almost like they decided they were not going to get off the stool. Well, after halftime, I don't know what he said to them, but they more than got off the stool. All of a sudden, that defense, Tate Smith and those guys started flying around the field. But the additional piece to that, Moses Morris, I thought was excellent in the second half. I thought his ability, along with Seacrest in that running game and that offensive line, started to, I think, wear down the Marvin Ridge defense just a little bit. And then they got timely big plays. A prime example, Haynes Robitzer, young quarterback, just a sophomore, throws an interception in the end zone. Marvin Ridge brings it out, but they only bring it out to about the 2-yard line. Well, Lake Norman stayed composed. They get the safety right away. And one of the things that we had talked about going into the game was at some point special teams was going to have to be a factor. Both kickers were really good, so we weren't seeing any kickoff returns. Well, that changed on the safety. Because, and I mentioned it right then in the game, I said, not only is this a safety and the 2 points and you get the ball back, but there's going to be a return because you're backed up so far with the free kick. They get a good, strong return that sets them up in plus territory. They get the touchdown, and then ultimately, as you mentioned, they go on to win the football game. So all of a sudden, special teams became a big factor, and it was based on field position. And I will tell you this, and I was unable to get exactly who it was, but shout out to a member of the Lake Norman High School staff, because as soon as those sprinklers went off, he just happened to be on the sideline, and he was able to immediately sprint across the field to the other field house and hit a switch and get those sprinklers turned off relatively quickly. So they were Johnny on the spot, if you will, when they needed to be.
Absolutely, Reggie. Never a dull night in Friday night sports. Before I let you go, we talked about it a little bit. We're going to talk about it after this. This coming game of the week, Porter Ridge up against Monroe. They're 2A Monroe, but they're no easy game. They've shown their prowess these last few weeks, taking out East Meck last week 70-0. What do you think is going to be the X factor in this game between these two teams that are on the up and up?
I think it's going to be who the third person is, who shows up the biggest running the football, and then who can make a play in the passing game. If you look at both of these two teams, just from a statistical standpoint, you'll notice each team has 3 guys with about or more than 20 rushes so far on the season in just 4 games. That's interesting. They're spreading the wealth, sharing the love, and running the football. Neither of these teams is up over 150 yards per game passing. They don't throw it around a lot. It's going to be heavy running of the football. But I think the thing that's very, very interesting, and, you know, people ask all the time, who has the slight edge? I don't know if anybody has a, quote, edge in this game. One thing about Porter Ridge, their combined records of opponents this season, 3-13. On the other hand, it hasn't been great in terms of what they've played against from Monroe either. Aside from West Charlotte being 3-0, they haven't played anybody else that's above 500. So both of these teams, we're not quite sure how good they are based on who they've played. But I do think we're in line for a very competitive football game on Friday night. And I would encourage everybody to tune in and lock in, because I think it's going to be some ground and pound. But one thing I think is going to be interesting, the more and more I look at this game, I just have that feeling, Jack, we're going to have a high-scoring football game.
Well, we always hope for, at least here in studio, gives us more to talk about. Reggie Walker, thank you so much for your time and your input and your insight, and we look forward to hearing the call on Friday night in our Bahakel Sports Game of the Week. Like you said, you can live stream starting at 7 on bahakelsports.com. Now, we talked about it a little bit, that Game of the Week, Porter Ridge up against Monroe. We talked about Monroe shutting out East Mac last week. Porter Ridge has been on a hot streak. So let's take a look at what is going to go into this game as we get ready for it coming up.
And this one may be one of the more intriguing matchups yet, as Reggie alluded to. On the one hand, you have the Porter Ridge Pirates, who have not lost a game all season, taking down teams like Rocky River and Hickory Ridge. And on the other side of the field, you have Monroe High School. The Red Hawks may be a AA team, but they are no slouch. They dominated Rocky River, held their own against West Charlotte, and shut out East Mecklenburg while putting up a 70-burger. You're not going to want to miss this matchup.
Now, for all of your football highlights and scores, make sure you head over to bahakelsports.com every Friday night at 11 for the Blitz, as the Bahakel Sports teams bring you up to date on all of the gridiron action. Coming up next, we'll take a look at some boys soccer and girls volleyball matchups that took place last week. Game On rolls on. Inside the Bahakel Sports studio and our next episode of Game On. Now, while football teams hit the field every Friday night, there's a lot more action around our area when it comes to the other myriad of high school sports that are played in the fall. One of those is boys soccer, and there were some great matchups this past week. There were also some blowouts.
We start out with boys soccer as Davie takes on RJ Reynolds. No score early on, but it would not stay that way for long. RJ Reynolds has the ball in the offensive zone, the header, the footer, into the corner of the net to put RJ Reynolds up. The Demons take the lead. Demons with the ball again, trying to make something out of nothing here in the offensive zone. Lost the ball for a second. They're able to recover, get things reset on offense, taking it back to midfield, sending it the other direction before finally finding a lane, sending it all the way across the line into the box, where the striker's going to get a possession of it, fake out a defender, and slip this one past the goalie into the net. This would continue an offensive onslaught. It took them until the next period, but they were able to finally put up points there once they got into the second half. Now let's take a look at how things are going as the sun starts to go down. Demons with the ball again. Ball flies off screen, but it's the offensive attack from the Demons that would start here in the very corner until finally they're able to send it right through, right past the goalie. Another goal just a few minutes later for the Deacons. And finally, if it wasn't already decided, the nail in the coffin came with 23 minutes left. The footer, the tap, right into the goal. Defenders try to get to it there, not able to. That would seal the deal for RJ Reynolds over Davie.
We had some more action as well on the volleyball court. Let's head out to North Meck taking on Mallard Creek.
Mallard Creek 3-4 in this game, trying to get back to 500 in front of the home crowd. Already down one set to North Mecklenburg. And the thing to think about with volleyball is that it's a game of back and forth. It's a game of momentum. You take the lead and you keep on, and it's hard to build up that momentum back to try to come from behind. But that's what Mallard Creek Mavericks are built to try to do, and they're going to look to do so here with the aggressive slam, and now it'll be saved there by the back line. So that's going to put them even on this set. Give them some momentum as they continue to build. They've got a 3-point lead, continue to go forward. They're going to take their time, set up their play. Another strike, unable to be saved from the Mallard Creek Mavericks. This would continue on throughout this. You can see they took a massive lead here, 24-17 in this second set. They were able to continue, get that match point, get the set. Now they're tied. They would continue that set domination. Take this one 2-1. This will put Mallard Creek on a hot streak going forward as they would win their next two games.
We still have two more segments to go, and coming up next, we'll hear from one local football team who had a special homecoming this past Friday night. Stick around. Welcome back to Game On. The month of September is National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, and one local high school football team and mother are looking to make sure a message is heard.
An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. This is the phrase pushing Brandon Gentry and the Hopewell football team to lead the charge throughout the month of September and beyond.
It's a tricky game because, you know, as a football coach, you're trying to, hey, you got to be tougher. You need to be harder and everything. But at the same time, I just think it's something like we all have to take CPR, and I think we all should have to take this as well, just to at least have the information. Because, like I say, I wasn't ready when that kid came up to me. And now I feel like I'm ready and I can send them whoever they need to talk to.
Fonda Bryant is a 28-year survivor of suicide and the mother of a former college athlete. She says the stigma surrounding mental health is nowhere stronger than amongst athletes and black men.
Black culture, we just do not talk about mental health, and what we do is pray about it. Don't claim it. Give it to God as a sign of weakness. Because of the stigma, that is why we're dealing with this. So I'm just glad that Hopewell, the football team, is saying, you know what, Ms. Fonda, we're going to take a stand and let everybody know, and as student athletes, there's no shame in mental health.
Hopewell quarterback E.J. Johnson made it his focus to be an advocate for mental health among his teammates.
At the end of the day, we all human. We all have our failures, and we just got to get over it and just find a way how to get over it. Whether that's been finding some way with someone to talk to and just get your feelings out.
Brian says suicide is a ripple effect, but so is prevention. While the partnership with Hopewell Athletics has trickled throughout their student body, she wants to see it continue throughout the district.
A lot of cool stuff being done by Hopewell and Miss Bryant to spread that throughout the Charlotte Mecklenburg school system. Well, stay tuned. We have one more segment to go. We'll give you a sneak peek at this week's 704 High School Highlight Podcast with the head football coach at Providence High School, Wesley Ward. That's coming up when we come back. Welcome back to our final segment of Game On, a show that's just another piece of the puzzle in our complete coverage for your home of high school sports. I, of course, am Bahakel Sports anchor Jack Taylor, and every week Bahakel Sports director Jeff Taylor sits down with players, coaches, and others from high schools here in our area for the 704 High School Highlight Podcast. Now, on the latest episode released last Friday, Jeff sat down with the Providence High School head football coach Wesley Ward to talk about coaching, family, and much more. So take a look.
How good can this offense be?
It can be very good. You know, besides that first game where we were in the red zone maybe 4 or 5 times and didn't come away with much.
Right.
You know, but besides that game, I mean, we've put up 2 40-point games in a row.
Right.
But it's a lot different style than most people are used to. Providence has always been a tough, really strong line of scrimmage,
right.
downhill. We're coming
right.
at you, and we're going to battle with you
right.
until the end, you know. And so a lot of people are seeing a different side.
Our thanks again to Wesley Ward for sitting down to talk football on the 704 High School Highlight Podcast. Of course, it's about all sports and all stories. If you have a story you think wants to be told or should be told, reach out to us here at BahakelSports.com. And as we wrap up this episode of Game On, a quick reminder, you can catch all that action on BahakelSports.com. Thanks for joining us, and make sure you stay with Bahakel Sports for all of your high school coverage. Have a great week.